good morning, very good morning to everyone. Hope I'm audible. Yes. So thanks for this opportunity. Obviously, I have an esteemed panel here, and I wanted to just open this discussion with a few thoughts. And the pandemic is not yet over, so my first thought goes on that. In fact, COVID-19 obviously threw us and organizations into a bit of crisis. I would say a bigger challenge than what we thought it would be. And obviously, it has kind of created what we would say a new normal for how businesses operate and people interact and people work, right? With that, obviously, remote working, dynamic allocation of resources, acceleration of the entire digitization and automation agenda, and obviously, the entire thing about how we are interacting with each other more from a virtual, not necessarily from a in person, and it's great to see all of you here in the room, but obviously it's changed over time to more virtual aspect. That's been the challenge, and how we deal with it is necessarily what is crippling or started to cripple us, and obviously business leaders and HR at the forefront of it have decided to kind of jump in and find few answers. So as we reimagine the world post-COVID, obviously it's no more about how we ran the businesses, how we looked at talent, how we looked at leadership necessarily. The pre-COVID era continues, right? So the reimagination has to be very, very different. Obviously, there has to be a lot of reskilling, workforce planning. We're speaking of literally, automation, which is at unprecedented pace, digitization, and I spoke of technology in the past. Obviously, lower transaction costs. So costs become one of the key aspects of how we run the entire agility around it, and efficiencies getting built in. So with that, I think it's time for us to rethink how HR needs to look at and tackle these problems for the future. And at the helm of it is the HR leader himself or herself. And that's where I would throw this open, this discussion open to the esteemed panel for your opening comments, please. I'll start with you, Animesh, please.
Thank you, Surya. And I think it's such a pleasure to be here, and it almost feels normal, right? I still have a mask in my pocket, but and I'm as sure as all of you do, but it's absolutely a delight to be here in a forum like this, and it's been 2 years, so more of that, I guess, over coffee. But I think, Surya, what you touched upon are two sides of the subject, which is the role of HR leaders and the role of how does HR create leadership and what are leading HR teams doing in organizations and powering the organization forward. There is no doubt in my mind, and COVID really blew open that space for HR, that this function is now front and center. To use a term that some of my colleagues like from the marketing or business function use, HR is now center of plate. From being, and that's because talent is center of plate, right? From a perspective where we had different kinds of factors of production being the defining framework of competitive advantage, it's now well established that talent is center of plate, and therefore the expertise required to manage talent and harness talent more effectively than other organizations do must be center of plate. But within that, I wanted to leave the panel and the audience with a couple of thoughts. There are two things I think HR leaders and HR teams need to build upon and invest in a lot more intensively. And let me first lay out what I think is the conundrum, and I think the earlier speaker touched upon that. I did make some notes, so I'm going to refer to them as I speak about this. One of the biggest challenges, at least I've faced as we've gone through the pandemic and as the function evolves, is managing duality. And everything is now become, I mean, we've always managed duality, all of HR professionals in the room have always had to struggle with it to manage extremes. But what's happened in the last couple of years is that the polarities have started to pull apart a lot more. So there is individual, there's the organization. And both needs are now beginning to pull apart in different directions. Internal focus, external focus. How do you manage that? Personalization or differentiation versus integration. Again, two things that are pulling apart in different directions. Hierarchy, and culturally we love grades, bands, growth, all of that, vis-a-vis teamwork. And there are now new formats of work, agile work, etc., squad-based work that's emerging. So how do you manage around that? Leadership empowerment, accountability versus freedom and flexibility, centralization versus decentralization, the list goes on. And at a country level, talent scarcity at one end versus people abundance on the other.
Right.
And at a macro level, artificial intelligence versus human capability. And HR teams and HR leaders are going to be increasingly called upon, if they're not already being called upon, and all of you, I'm sure, see this in your organizations, to find middle ground. I think it's such an important skill. It's such an important capability that HR leaders bring to the table, is how do you find an operating middle ground between so many conflicting views, priorities, aspirations, and continue to move the organization forward in the whole area of talent and organization. And honestly, there is nothing else in my view outside of talent and organization, because all organizations are really about talent going forward. Every other format of as I say, competitive advantages more or less disappeared. And that brings me to the second issue, which is for HR teams and HR leaders to increase their repertoire of influence. You know, we all influence using multiple ways. So the most obvious one is influence through position and authority. So you've been given a position, you've been given authority, and therefore you will take a certain set of decisions which is influencing the entire ecosystem around you. Then there's influence through expertise, because you know a subject better than other people, and therefore you will be able to drive that. But beyond that, there is influence through relationships, there's influence through credibility, there's influence through business understanding, and the role or the expectation of HR, if you need to manage this whole struggle of duality, is to keep expanding your repertoire of influence. So these are, to my mind, the two big thrusts that I see for HR leaders and HR leadership to move forward in the future, Surya. Let me stop there.
Absolutely, can't agree more. I think move to Dr. Your opening comments, please, on this.
I think, am I audible? Yeah.
Yes.
So I think this has been the most famous phrase for the entire pandemic, am I audible, right? So I'm happy to be visible and audible. And I think there can't be a better discussion than the one we're having today, very, very pertinent. Because I think we've all experienced what is the new normal, and everybody now is talking about the next new normal. And I think it's going to be all about technology. And I don't think as HR professionals we can today say technology is something I don't understand or something I cannot relate to. It's very much our business to understand the business of our business, and to understand how do we create our own niche and our own our own space out here. So I think what has been important in this entire pandemic, and I will have to keep that as a reference point, because I think that is from where we take off in a very different and on a very different trajectory than what we have in the past. So starting with, I think most of us today are operating in hybrid workspaces, and we actually are having to go back to the drawing board to maybe come back to some very basic policies which we might not have looked at for all these years, like the workspace. managing day-to-day issues at the workspace? How do we deal with, a concern somebody shares? How do we ensure that everybody reports? How do we ensure there's no effort leakage? How do we ensure that, the customer is getting his money's worth and, can get a delivery as and when it is scheduled? So what we took for granted are things where, again, we've got to go back as HR people to support our businesses. The other area being, I think, the nature of jobs that are changing, the nature of the way they're being constructed. I think a lot of spaces are already attempting gig, and we are providing those kind of opportunities to employees who seek them, maybe wholly, partially, whatever. So these kind of changes in the business model is going to force us as HR to go back to see how do we structure these jobs, how do we look at, again, going back to the drawing board, deciding how do we compensate in the first place. Reward recognition comes much later, but first how do we compensate for this, new way of working. So I think there are various such touch points, engagement being another one of them with this diversity in the workforce. We're going to again have to see what does it take to engage a virtual, workforce. So I think diversity is itself a very big agenda. So inclusion without exception is something I think which keeps us all extremely busy as HR folks. And I think our work is just about cut out for us, and we've got to see how to take it on from here. So thanks, Surya.
Thank you, ma'am. And Krishnakumar, your
morning, and it's good to be here, and great to be part of this panel. From my sector, which is basically for me, does we have a change in the entire working style or the way we worked? It's a hybrid, but I think the hybrid part is maybe 20%, because for us, it's still the physical part has been there all throughout. But from an HR or HR leadership perspective, I think we need to be enablers and facilitators on a continuous basis, because automation or technology is not going to replace what a person does or people do. And one more thing for me is the leadership, the HR leadership taking and speaking for the people rather than speaking for the management. I think that's a change which we need to bring in, because we have policies which are very common in the standard policy. But today, with the pandemic setting in, I think we might have to look at policies specific to meeting needs of each of the employee, because I think that's something which I've learned, because everybody is not able to work fully from home, or they're not able to work from office. So maybe there was a mixed way of looking at things. And your universe is, or my universe is not just my regular employees on my payroll, because I have a vast majority of people who are part of my environment. So as an HR leader, we had to look at it, and I think that's something which we'll have to look at it on a continuous basis. I think that's 2 points for me, is go out of way and get into the policy changes and drive those within the organization. I think that's one of the things which I have in my agenda, at least for the next 2 years.
Sure. Thank you. Mr. Deshpande.
Sure.
Opening comments, please.
Good morning, everybody. It was great listening to all three of you. Some wonderful points. Some of them I think I will definitely refer as I speak along. But I think, to me, opening statement, right? So I would simply say rethink, not only HR, everything that we do. Last 2 years has taught us that we had no choice anyway. It taught us to be different. It shook us so much that we started living differently, thinking differently. We are pushed into situations which we never anticipated. So is true of organizations as well. We have learned so many things along the way. We didn't realize that we have left everything, a lot of what we thought life is all about, working is all about, HR is all about, much behind. And the pace and the passion with which we embraced, I really salute HR fraternity for really rising up to the occasion. They didn't have every day, every moment was a new challenge for them. The last problem was solved 2 hours ago, and then they started living in one more new situation. So the constant learning really kept them going month after month, and 2 years hence, we are still thinking, rethink HR, there's no question. You have to think differently. There's no option. So today, I think we have to really, like when you're walking through a storm of dust, when you come out of it, you just shake it, right? So to shake everything that we were in the past and look at life differently. Organizations have changed so much. The only thing that has not changed is the way we were collecting money, recruiting people has changed, everything about HR has changed. Now, here, this is the time for us to really think deeply, introspect, not alone, with your leadership team. Get them into a room and spend those 4 to 8 hours to see what has changed, how can, what are you doing differently, what are the challenges you are facing, what should change now, the way we have been working, or we should continue the way we were doing before. I'm sure you will find a whole lot of ideas, whole lot of insights and needs that will come up, which will force us to do things differently. Basically, sorry to use the word, but it's totally changing the lens. And it's a great opportunity. That's the best part of it. It's a great opportunity to look at life, which you know how it is to be led, but will you be able to live the same way? Not sure. That is the excitement. So that's the way we should do it.
Sure. No, thank you, sir. I think obviously going back to the title of the day, Rethink HR. I mean, obviously we are looking at rethinking of how businesses are run, rethinking how we look at talent, how we look at development, how we look at learning, how we look at technology, how we look at all the enabling factors. That's the crux. And obviously, there is duality, there is technology, there is performance, and everything else which we need to kind of keep in mind, while we rethink this entire strategy. So going back to you, Animesh, I think it's important for us to identify how the future leader would look like, HR leader would look like before, and it's important because we are rethinking, right? As part of the rethinking and as part of the unknown world we are entering into, where and how do you think the future leader is going to look like?
That's a really difficult question to answer. He probably 7 foot tall and probably a woman, I think, and has the ability to do almost everything, because that's what we are being called upon to do now. COVID has seen HR leaders manage BCP, honestly do the heavy lifting to keep organizations and value chains running. But without being facetious, I think there are 4 things which are fairly obvious. I mean, we need to get a lot more comfortable with data. HR leaders and HR teams must be comfortable with analyzing, understanding, and interpreting data. We must get comfortable with technology, and not just work tech, but all tech. You need to, as an HR leaders, need to understand technology, because technology is, if not already, underpinning almost every business process today.
Right.
So we must get comfortable with technology, not necessarily coding language, but the deployment of technology. We've spent enormous amounts of time and effort on re-emphasizing that you have to understand business. Whether you're HR, whether you're marketing, whether you're finance, whether you are, whether you're whatever. Honestly, sometimes I don't understand the concept of business and HR, because the business of HR, or the business of business is HR, is people. There's nothing more to it. We never turn around and say marketing must understand business. And look, what marketing brings to the table is the ability to understand consumer preference. They don't understand finance, they don't understand people, or conceptually they don't. But nobody turns around and says finance must understand business. Finance has a narrow view of how the P&L is constructed and how you do fundraise and a whole bunch of very important things. Why is it that suddenly all of us are saying HR must understand business. Of course, it's a given. If you are going to be a senior leader at the head of the table of an organization and you don't understand how that organization works and how it makes its money and profits, you're not going to be able to advise and take the right decisions, etc. And lastly, I think let me be caveat this as I say it. I think the balance, the role of HR and our ability to balance between organizational interest and employee interest needs to improve dramatically. I think for far too long, we've been tilted in favor of organizational interest. And just the fact that talent is becoming scarce, critical, and the only competitive advantage, in being true to our role, we need to bring a better sense of balance between these two polarities and manage, and future HR leaders will need to manage this a lot better, otherwise they'll not be able to fund the talent requirements for driving organizational growth. So.
Sure. That's a tall ask, no doubt. That's a tall ask.
May I add one
Absolutely,
line to that?
please.
I think great insights again there. I think it's time for us to be, whether you are a CHRO or HR head or leader or no leader, it doesn't matter. You as an individual are a leader, it should be a leader. You are a leader in your life, of your role in a family, professional, every moment. That is given. When you can't be that, you can't be even when you sit in that seat. That's number one. Second is, after having come through this, last 2 years of shock, pain, and anxiety and whatnot, it's time to be more compassionate, to show more love to our colleagues at workplace, to be more authentic. He mentioned about duality. I think beautifully 7 to 8 examples he gave. How are you going to play with that and exist in the world of duality? Trust you me, we are not talking about two different things when two different things, seemingly looking different things existing, coexisting. The goal is same. So don't get shocked by the duality. It is there. Every coin has two sides. And I think that the last one he talked about is the learning piece, which is so very important, that will come. I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. In fact, staying on the learning piece, to you, Mr. Krishnakumar, I wanted to check, how do you see, there is a beautiful article I was reading the other day where it spoke of a R&D specialist in learning, right? So, how critical do you think learning is or is going to be in shaping our future, especially from an HR standpoint?
I think that's going to be an important aspect, but I think one of the first things we have to do is to do some unlearning part of it.
Right.
I think the way we did things traditionally, or particularly HR folks, maybe I'm coming out because I'm not a purebred HR. For me, I call it, I did 18 years of marketing and sales. So that's where it comes from. But I think, so from the traditional HR, from the earlier industry or factories, so we have changed. And going forward, and we had to unlearn a lot of things, because it was from an administrative perspective, it has, they were holding authority, holding decision-making powers. I think from there, we have changed a lot. And going forward, I think we might have to, so the HR folks might have to learn not only the technology part of it, maybe how the new age people who come, their demands and aspirations are different. It is no more what your HOD says is going to be the guy who joined yesterday. His way of working or his working style is going to be different. Are we ready for that? So I think, so that unlearning part and adopting, and there is no one size fit all. That is something which I believe, and I think it has been traditionally, it has been there. So adopting things, maybe we might have to get the economies of scale and all of that, we might have to adopt certain things, but we need to adopt things which are flexible. So being flexible, those are two or three things I think which will need to be done not only by HR folks, but they need to be the leaders to start that process. So I think that's very important for me.
Sure, sure. No, that's great. I think, and with the entire spin on technology, right? Learning plus technology and the unlearning bit, how do you see that coming together?
I am definitely seeing you three guys are trying to corner me, huh? Good, good. The learning leads to Deepak. And that again, that's good. I'm enjoying this. So, technology as an enabler.
Right.
Sure. I think it's not such a huge, what should I say? It is not surprising, so to say. If I recall, last 7 to 8 decades, India itself has witnessed a lot of technology, experienced technologies. Think of early 70s. I think TCS was formed around the same time, 74, 75, right? Then Netmagic and so many other mushrooming of IT companies. We weren't there in the early part, of course. We are not 16 now, but definitely, yes, we weren't there then. So we have seen that India has really matured. But the early 90s really gave an opportunity for us to witness how India transformed on the IT world in the global map, right? And then came the dot-com boom and burst, and we continued for another 20 years till COVID happened to us. You know what I mean? From 75 till about 2020, you were on a technology platform itself. Everything was working fine. Technology was getting absorbed, adopted, practiced at the own pace which an organization or a society or a market or a country was able to afford. But it was always on the upswing. You've seen economics, really India becoming huge power on the IT domain. Despite that, there were so many companies which did not take the technology route. Just because they were not in technology segment, they were offering some other product and services. They existed. That means we have had companies which belong to different domains and sectors where technology was maximum, where it was moderate, where it was average, and were at minimum. But they were all existing and doing fantastic business. Until such a time, COVID happened to us. When COVID happened to us, all the same old, these 4 companies in 4 different segments, they lapped up to technology, yes or no? Did they wait to be, how to do it? No. You have seen in last 2 years, so many technology solutions have come in different space. Not necessarily in HR. HR we know because we have been talking about it for decades, but we never embraced it. But now that it has happened, COVID, now we are running for what can we do remotely, what can we do hybrid model, what can we do, we make it easy for people, you know. World is life, we are like that, human nature is like that. या तो दर्द होना चाहिए या फिर दर्द होना चाहिए. डर नहीं तो दर्द, नहीं तो नहीं होगा. That is what has happened with us. So technology is not some new animal, it was always there. You did not look for it because there was a pull factor. Pull factor क्या है? You should afford. क्यों करना है? There were people who did not, अरे technology है तो मेरा power जाएगा, अरे why should I do it, why should I invest, let me improve on my EBITDA. All these things happened. It was only after COVID, suddenly you realize, oh my God, my guy has to work from home, what do I do? No, I will have to buy a laptop, but I don't have, but you have to give, because I can't bring him to office, because COVID guidelines. Jhak maar ke, you have to buy, within 4 or 5 days, you delivered everybody a laptop or a desktop and everything. Until then, you never worried about the firewall, network systems. Now you are doing it all overnight. You're spending more, but you are doing it. You have to do it because the survival is at stake. So therefore, there is always a pull factor, push factor. We were pushed to technology in last 2 years, right? But technology was always there. Now that also brings to another factor that the ecosystem should support. The ecosystem will take time. We have been, we have since the. I remember listening to robots, you know, aeroplanes to the satellites were there, but robots were never so much. AI also we heard and read in my school days, but they were not implemented and heard, you know, next door, yahi pe hai. It's, you know, my mobile, you know, something like that. But because the ecosystem has changed, now we are seeing the adoption of technology easily. and more deeply. So it's about how we evolve, the way we start living what we want, where we are pushed into a situation that really enhances. So it is said that in last 2 years, the adoption of technology has accelerated 300 times, matlab 3 times faster than what it would have otherwise happened had there been no COVID, right?
Absolutely.
So therefore they say, uthana, look, kaise, uth rahe, morning mein. That is one way of. But if you are disciplined, you know 6 o'clock I have to wake up, I have to go to gym, you will do by yourself. But every time I think, whether it's companies or human beings, we have to be woken up rudely out of our slumber. यही technology का भी होगा, वही company का, everybody will go to the same path. Yet we will not learn. Maybe we will learn, because when there is money, we will learn. Anyway, so that is the second part, technology. Now when technology is changing, it does not mean everything is hunky-dory. It brings along, it does not come alone, it brings with its own challenges and issues and problems, and some bad things also. But looking from HR perspective, how should HR or companies or societies become more technology savvy? We don't go that far, but at least from HR perspective, what does it mean to us as HR leaders? What does it mean to the organizations where we are working? What does it mean to the people who are working with us? These 3 things definitely we need to be very clear. So if a recent study was done by, I think, McKinsey or somebody, they have surveyed about 25,000 companies in Europe, especially Europe and US. Asia Pac, a few companies were there, but they have seen how the skills have shifted in last 15 years, basis that they have predicted by 2030 how the shift in skills is going to happen. And then COVID happened. Suddenly all that math has gone for a toss. But then they have noticed that the technology skills are going to be the most sought after, because of the technology has changed. They will see now companies investing 56% more time, money in building that, learning new technologies. Therefore, we are talking about AI, ML, data analytics, you name them, everything is going to be there. So that is one piece. So lot of shift in technology space itself.
Sure.
Second surprising thing that came was about the social skills. Because now, with this hybrid model coming in, you will have to find a way to let people, because employees now have understood, kaam ghar se bhi ho sakta hai, So they would rather go and pick up offers only where companies are offering hybrid model or total 100% work from home. If companies now start insisting every day you have to be here, then they'll say, I can go for a walk, I have another opportunity, right? That is going to force again companies to invest into technologies. Sure. Now companies are opening up, they're saying, oh, we are opening up, welcome back, welcome back. वो 2 दिन का honeymoon है. Everybody, oh yeah, we want to come, we want to meet people, fine. Then suddenly they started getting more complaint, my laptop is conked off, it is not working, my network is problem, that is problem. Offices have opened up, right? So this, our HR head was very smart. He said, okay, तुम office में आके काम कर फिर अभी तो ट्रेन चालू है, बस चालू है, you can take your public transport, आजा. After 2 days, all such complaints stopped. Remote working में काम नहीं हो रहा है. You're getting what I'm saying? Employees are also very happy. I mean, very smart. They want to have the cake and eat it too. Now management also has realized, why should I invest into real estate? Work is happening from hybrid. खर्चा कम करो, bottom line बढ़ा करो. So they are saying, we don't need 100 seats, we don't need so much of space, let us cut down, only get people whom we need, only for meetings. You will see that trend coming in from 6 to 9 months now. That means against what technology is going to be the backbone of the whole thing, correct?
Correct.
So everybody for ABC reason, you are going technology for your own reasons, because you want to control attrition and employee engagement, performance management, you have to find answers to do all that. Attendance, induction, recruitment, orientation, training, TMS, सब कुछ आपको वहीं पे करना पड़ेगा through technology in a hybrid world, right? He will also support now your CEO. Until now, he was not supporting you because कितना खर्चा क्यों करना? You will the last person. The same guy will now say, oh, I am with you. So, I will invest. So either way, technology is the baby, favorite baby. Now, if that is the favorite way, now you have to see how am I going to address this? People have to work, they have to learn. They have to learn what? Technology, new technology, what are new skills? How to deal socially. What social now? In a virtual world. You know what? Not like this. This is the first time, pehli baar aaya, maze mein hai. Khush hai. Right? Social, being social in virtual world, you need to have the skills. The skills are going to be different. And third last is emotional skills. We say we love family, HR is all about fun, game, blah, blah, blah. Abhi aapko emotion batana hai, wo bhi virtually. Kaisa karenge?
Correct.
So, that's going to be huge. So, therefore, you have to be authentic. You have to go back to the fundamentals and the base. Really caring, sharing, being, proactive, being communicative. Ye sab karna padega. So, the skill shifts are going to be very different. So, what are we doing as a company, as HR heads, and training and retraining and rising to this need of reskilling? That is going to really decide what speed technology train you have to catch.
Sure. No, thank you. Dr. Mathur, my question to you, and obviously we've heard the tall ask from Animesh. We've heard the need for learning and the ask there, and obviously the entire enablement of technology piece. So what do you see the delta from today to the future being? What kind of, from a leader of today, HR leader of today, to HR leader of the future, where do you see that delta coming?
Yeah, thanks, Surya. And I think it starts with priorities. We've first got to get our priorities right, and it'll be, maybe slightly different for each of the organizations and, the participants, the audience here. But after all, that we've all, been articulating what needs to happen, I think it goes without saying that the first things first, which is leadership. Do we have the leadership bench? Do we have the right people to steer us through all of this ambiguity, complexity, technology, and what have you? So now when we talk of leadership, obviously it's the top, but it's also the mid-levels. Now at the top, what is the kind of leadership we want? What we need to have and build as HR leaders is to ensure, build is maybe not exactly the right word, but what we need to ensure is that we have the right people who can help us envision. When we are trying to rewrite and rework the future, we've got to be able to have the right people who can envision what this new organizational vision is. This was my old business reality, this is my new business reality, so what is my new organizational vision, what is my purpose? So sometimes we've got to relook at our vision statements, mission statements, and this is the time when we again come back and see what are those values that I have been so far building so meticulously into my fabric, and going forward, what are all those additional things that I need to be able to have a sustainable organization and a sustainable business. So of course we need trendsetters rather than followers. We need influencers. We need that kind of set of skills and competencies at the top. But equally important is the investment in building a strong middle layer, because this is the segment which is going to look at your operational excellence, your day-to-day work, your day-to-day delivery, your day-to-day management of people. This is the segment which is going to help you in the transition management, which is going to help you work through this change. So building the strong leadership bench, I feel is probably the first task that all of us here would need to focus on. Following that is, of course, the focus on change and transition management. As HR, we are working hand in hand with business to make it happen on the ground, on the floor. So how are we going to make this happen? We've got to make sure that our, I alluded to this earlier, that our policies need to be in tune with the times. But how are we going to make sure everybody follows it? And as Deepak also mentioned, how do we make sure that everybody goes along with it and accepts it? Until that acceptance doesn't come in, you'll have a layer of visionaries, but nobody down, to really carry it forward. So HR needs to focus very closely on this whole piece of transition management and make it as seamless as possible for business and absolutely, it's very, very smooth when it comes to the end customer. So these are the two things I think are top of the line, and needless to mention, we come back to technology and we come back to learning. So we've got to decide that with this, reworked vision, reworked purpose, reworked values and other things we want to run with, then what are the skills that we really need to hone? Do we have that critical mass of people who are going to take this whole vision and mission forward? And last but not the least, I think the well-being piece is becoming more and more important for HR to stay focused on. We've seen enough and more of our colleagues and their families, and even HR and their families. We are also suffering, right? In the pandemic, we also have, if we've had to make 10 calls to associates to check how are they, have we made those calls to our own, brethren, so to say, to check on how are we? And so this emotional caring has to start at home. We have to first, as HR people, be so resilient and so strong to be able to first keep our head above the waters and to take the organization along with us. If things are not okay in my house, I definitely am nobody to step out and try to sort things out for others, because I'm quite sure the solutions will not hit the mark. So investing in this emotional well-being, physical well-being. Now this is all very nice to say, but how do we do it? Up till now it was very easy. We would, the day-to-day job of an HR person, take a floor walk. You get to know, what is the sentiment today, what's happening. Oh, that boss said this team celebrated, this associate, this employee is not well, something or the other. You always pick up those vibes. And we've all lived this challenge through the pandemic. We've relied on Zoom calls and Microsoft Teams and all of that to kind of get a handle and some sort of control over, the employee base that we work with. But going forward, I think there's a lot more technology can do for us, whether we come back to the workplace or whether we continue in hybrid mode or in the virtual mode. I think there's a lot more technology can bring in to this space, and some organizations are pretty forward with that. So I think the metaverse is just around the corner, and HR cannot ignore it. And maybe, I don't know, Surya, the next conference or next few conferences we'll all be in our avatars in the metaverse. Correct. So the world is changing. We've got to go ahead, embrace it, enjoy it, and celebrate it. So that's it from me, Surya.
Thank you. I think that's lovely. I think we are at the top of the hour. So no, thank you for being a lovely set of panelists and giving us all the insights. I know the journey is not going to be easy. The ask is quite tall, and obviously there's a lot to do before, or a lot to figure out before we travel through this. So yeah, we can all wish ourselves the best, and I'm sure we are gearing up in our own ways to kind of meet the needs. Right. With this, I thank you, panelists, each one of you. Thank you for your valuable